Welcome to the Mold Matters Podcast. Whether you are looking for help recovering from mold illness or just want to learn more about creating a safe environment for your family, this podcast is the place for you.
Did you know the levels of some hazardous pollutants in indoor air have been found to be up to 70 times greater than in outdoor air? But who's monitoring that for you? Check out mypureproducts.net for the latest in monitoring devices and DIY mold test kits. Take control of your environment with mypureproducts.net.
Welcome to the Mold Matters Podcast. How's everybody doing?
Podcast number is 734 already.
Yeah, wow.
Man, the time flies.
Yeah, seems like we've been doing this only a few months.
Yeah.
It's been that long.
Yeah.
Anyways, how are you guys doing? Jeremy here alongside Mike for
Hi there.
the Mold Matters Podcast.
Yeah, good to be with you.
Yeah, good to be with you, all you guys. We're going to do something a little different today. We're always thinking of ways to spice up, the
Mold.
topic of mold.
Mold, yeah.
As if it needs any spice up.
Agreed.
But
Yeah.
here we are. And actually because I actually think it's really interesting to hear, experiences from the field, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we've said this before. You learn the principles of mold and water intrusion. And it's one of those things where I feel like you learn a base of knowledge and you can probably handle 70% of the situations.
Yeah.
And then the remaining 30% are just...
There's a story behind it.
Yeah, there's a story.
Yeah.
It's an isolated incident. And a lot of these people who can't figure out their mold and their water in their house, it's
Yeah.
usually one of these kind of oddball ones.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, that doesn't fit the, I had a leak, I had a flood, my humidity got high, for whatever
Right.
reason.
So that's funny because I was just reading this online military magazine for
Mhm.
military housing,
Mm-hmm.
and they were talking about mold in military housing. It's all the talk now
Mm-hmm.
in the military, and the suggestions they had was what you should probably do is get rid of the mold.
Yeah.
And then not have any mold come back. Try to keep your place clean, and that should do it.
That's,
Just get rid of it.
and
Get rid of it, and then
and
I'm sure they meant physically remove it.
Yeah.
It sounded funny. Just get rid of it, and then
Don't.
don't let it come
Let it
back.
come back.
Yeah.
I mean, in reality, that's kind of, if you get down to the fundamentals, that's really what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's exactly what we do, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna, I think we'll start doing these more often. We'll see how it goes. But basically, Mike and I, when we come home from a trip, or I've been training a guy locally here in Utah, and doing lots of inspections, and we just, I'd have to say a week doesn't go by that I don't see something that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we have to call each other.
Yeah.
And
we'll-
you're not going to believe this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I just called you this morning about an HVAC idea. Anyways,
Yeah.
but this one, so I'd like to share this one, get your commentary on it, Mike.
Yeah.
But this one is one I had recently when I was training here. Go show up to the house,
Mhm.
really nice house. You walk in, to the right, there's an office. Well, first of all, in an inspection, I typically start asking the customer, well, tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay?
Why did you call
Why'd
us?
you
There's
call
a
me?
reason you called us.
Yeah, tell me the story. He turns me to the office, which is just to the right as I walked in, and he's like, there's just a kind of a moldy smell in this room. So obviously I start asking questions about, well, what's around this room? Now, there was a bathroom, so, I'm gathering information, and then they're like, well, as I was looking into that possibility of some water leakage,
Yeah.
they interrupt. Well, they're like, it's the most prevalent, the smell in the in the venting, in the furnace, and so they're like, go smell, and I got over there, and I'm like, yeah, there's kind of a funk to that smell in there, and so I'm like, all right, well, that leads me to maybe the furnace, the
Mhm.
coils, we've talked about HVAC before. So anyways, and then I'm a little these mold assessments are fun because you're kind of like a detective.
Yeah, you are. And oftentimes where the smell is bad is not where the mold is the worst.
That is very true.
Because of the air currents in the
Yeah.
home and whatnot, it can really throw you.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of had that here in the office. Remember when we were on the midway
Yeah.
midway of my stairs up
Uh-huh.
to my office, we're like, there's something weird here,
Yeah.
but there's nothing under those stairs. I mean, No, literally nothing. You can look right under,
Right.
and those are newish stairs. Anyways, but I'm pretty sure. Did we determine that was coming from the HVAC blowing right there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you feel it on the stairs, which is 35 feet away from the furnace, but.
But people underestimate, not to get off on a tangent, but people underestimate the airflow, and especially when you start throwing in concepts like stack effect of stairwells,
Yeah.
it can really throw you.
We should do a full podcast on
We
stack
should.
effect.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like stack effect.
Stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, you know, I get, you know, I do a lot of question asking when I'm doing the assessment, because honestly, you or the homeowner, you know, you're going to know more about the history and some
Way
of the,
more than we know.
way more than I know here in, you know, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So you're a strong resource in that case. So I was asking all kinds of questions and started to determine that, you know, because I was trying to figure out, why is this room, you know, are any of the rooms smelling? Well,
Right.
they're like,
so just so I can back up and bring everybody on what my thought is you're saying it's probably in the HVAC system somewhere in the ductwork, but why just that room?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they did say, well, there is another room, and it was kind of not too far, kind of the next one down. They're like, that one has had a little bit of a thing going on, and
Yeah.
and then that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's, you know, and they asked me, could there be a dead animal in our ducting? And that is a possibility, but
I've pulled dead animals out of ductwork before.
Have you?
Yeah. Didn't
Yeah.
you ever see that picture of that varmint I pulled out in Tennessee?
I don't think so.
That was awful. We'll do another podcast on that sometime.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's not mold, it's rodents.
I was really happy that I had a big pair of pliers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Wow. Okay.
it was gross. Yeah.
So anyways, get down to the HVAC system. We realize there is a humidifier on the system.
The scourge of the earth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have mentioned humidifiers, you know, permanently attached humidifiers to the
Yeah.
HVAC. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but this is kind of interesting. And so red flag, right?
Yeah.
I always think in terms of red flags. Okay,
Right.
red flag. Okay, so as we analyze, you know, I get into someone's house and we start going downstairs and around the corners, and I have no idea where I am, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't know where east, west, north, south. This is a basement. So I start asking, I'm like, where's the office in relation to where we are?
Mm-hmm.
Directly above. And you can even see the trunk coming out of the HVAC going
right
straight up into that room.
Yeah. Right.
And then there's the humidifier, the trunk
Yeah.
right above the room.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so, you know, tell me more. And he's like, well, we have turned that down in recent times. I think in the beginning we were cranking it up too high. And I was like, okay.
So when they say turn it down, they mean less water going into the pads.
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, you can kind of there's
Yeah.
a I can't remember what the
It's a scale.
humidistat.
It's a scale. At the top end of the scale, it's lots of mold, and the bottom is not quite as much mold.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, in the beginning.
We're probably going to get sued by the humidifier companies.
Yeah.
Good people. Good people.
He's like, in the beginning, I was, they've only been there 6 years. I said in the beginning, I kind of, he's figuring out what to put it at.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it was too high. And I was like, well, did it get humid in that room? He's like, oh, yeah. It was like a sauna in there. Like, it was like almost running from the walls. And I was like, okay, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. And I was like, was it humid in any other rooms? And they're like, no. Well, that next room.
The one that doesn't smell quite so bad.
Yeah,
But, yeah.
that one had a little bit more
Yeah.
humidity, and then after that, none. And so I was like, okay. I mean, I think we've figured out our issue here.
Yeah.
And so that first room, a lot of humidity, more mold.
Right.
Second room, less humidity, less mold. But what's interesting about that concept, we didn't bring this up when we talked about humidifiers, is it really makes sense that humidity coming from the furnace,
Oh,
it's gonna dump.
Yeah, it has to.
It's gonna
Yeah.
dump, especially you mentioned the when it hits corners too.
Yeah, it's going to hit the corner and condensate or coalesce, I guess is the word, right on at that
Yeah,
angle and drop off. And yeah, they're just not a good idea.
yeah. And that's something I hadn't really thought about deeply before. But really, if because we've talked about if you want to if you want to have one in your room at night, just a personal one,
Yeah.
it's probably fine.
You can keep it clean. You can keep an eye on it.
Yeah, keep it
But,
lowish.
but you have no idea what's going on in that system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it kind of confirms to me that those humidifiers may not be the best idea because he said he had it set at a relatively low,
Low mold setting.
low mold setting.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But if you think about it, it's like thermostats. In my house, we set it to 72 upstairs,
Mm-hmm.
and the downstairs, well, it'll say I'm turning on the heat, it'll turn off at 72 upstairs, but the downstairs is
Right. It has no idea. Yeah.
it's totally different temperature.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's similar, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Where it's
yeah.
like, okay, where the thermostat is, the humidity was only 40.
Well, and truly, I don't think those things are intuitive enough to actually measure the humidity in the house. It
Yeah.
truly is just a little valve that's turning on more water or less water.
Yeah.
Right. I don't
Oh,
think
yeah.
I don't think they're reading the humidity throughout the house and saying, "Hey, less water or more water."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
Because based on what he's saying, if he was turning it up to 40, 45,
mm-hmm.
and that first room it went to was dripping. That
Yeah.
dripping is higher than 45. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You've been around humidity enough to know. Yeah.
I am in a dry
So
state.
in one house, you can literally go from Louisiana to the next house down, maybe, I don't know, Georgia,
yeah.
or next room down,
Yeah.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to work yourself into
Yeah.
kind of the Midwest, and then
Kansas.
eventually get to Phoenix.
Exactly.
The very last room in the house on the line is Phoenix. Yeah,
That's a very good way to think about it.
and we're trying to assume that we can make all of those even.
Can I share one more thing? I think it was this customer that clued me. I've never talked to you about this,
Yeah.
but I want to get your thoughts on it.
Okay.
It's related. Because I've always, we've talked about the kind of the industry standard is 50% relative humidity. It shouldn't be above that in your home.
Right. Yeah.
And then we've kind of talked about how in the South,
Yeah, 60's pretty good.
60's fine.
Yeah. if you can stay below 60, you're good. Yeah.
yeah, and I have heard there's a guy out in Wyoming, a remediator. I've heard he's like, I like 45, and so there's,
Yeah.
but I got thinking, I do think Utah, you should stay away from 50 even if you can.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, but here's what one guy brought up to me. He's like, I wonder if mold has adapted in these dry climates to where it doesn't need as much moisture to feed on because it's been deprived. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like, okay, if we get 45, man, that's since we've
Well, I also
been
think
deprived.
this. I think this is, let's take that house, for example. That room that was an actual sauna. That room that's a sauna probably isn't spreading spores throughout the house at all,
Mm-hmm.
because that's very happy, well-fed mold that has no reason to spore out.
Yeah.
Down the line, you probably hit a point where, okay, it's not as stinky, not as many toxins, but we're spreading spores like crazy because it is drier down
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing about humidifiers is, because when I was down in that furnace room, we've talked about how these furnaces are not airtight,
Yeah.
and I could see a pretty big crack, and I just put my nose right up to it.
Yeah, bad plan.
And
Yeah.
got like an instant headache. I was
Yeah.
like, oh. So I'm assuming the coils,
Air conditioning coils.
air
Yeah.
conditioning coils are kind of messed up or moldy. So, you raise that humidity, and it's really hard to dry those coils out too. If you're constantly running humid air over them.
Yep.
So, I think it was.
That's another reason why we see it all the time where people have, and I think we mentioned this before in another podcast, but when people have an oversized air conditioning unit in their home, it runs hard
Yeah.
or runs well for a few minutes, and then it cools the house off really quickly.
Yeah.
Then it shuts off for an hour or more.
Yeah.
And then it comes on again. Well, every time it shuts off and you don't have air passing over that, those coils are going to get wet
Yeah.
because they're going to condensate.
Yep.
So, yeah, as far as putting a humidifier on a furnace, I don't think it is a great idea.
Yeah. I know. There's.
And we've said that with our company. We've said that for 10 years now.
Yeah.
Kind of feel like we were ahead of the curve on that one.
Yeah. I feel like, with the dry climate, people, they want to do an add-on, and builders, I think, like, hey, if we're in a dry climate, you're moving
you're
from,
gonna want
you're
this,
moving from
yeah.
Florida, Hey, crank this baby
We
up.
you and I did a house recently. Do you remember this? Where they had a humidifier and a dehumidifier in the house.
Oh.
Could really tune that house in. Do you remember that at all?
I don't remember that.
They had a
actually.
humidifier on the furnace, and then downstairs in the basement they had a dehumidifier.
Oh. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll do one on that later, you know.
Yeah.
The pros and
balancing act,
cons.
yeah.
So anyways, that's a little case study. I think it's instructive, especially, you know, if you're a homeowner and you have a humidifier, which many do in these drier states.
Yeah.
If you're just a remediator, I think that's something to think about when.
So one other point, and I truly do recommend anytime I'm in a home, I recommend they just turn them off. Just keep them off and maybe even take them off your system.
Oh, the
But-
humidifiers, yeah.
But I hear a lot of times people say, I have to run that, otherwise I get shocked.
Hmm.
And there's something about mold load in a home and people getting shocked that I don't think anybody's really ever figured out for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a common denominator a lot of times. And usually I tell them, just trust me. Let's treat your home, get the mold load back down to where it's under control. The shocking won't come back.
Mm-hmm.
And even with your humidifier off, and you know, 99% of the time it plays out. That's the way it is.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's really interesting.
it's a shocking story.
Very shocking.
Thanks for listening to the Mold Matters podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more in-depth information on mold illness and recovery.